Welcome, ladies and gents. This is AI Inferno, episode 117, and I am your host, Christopher Fryant. With me, as always, are my two wonderful co-hosts, Mr. Rich Silver and Miss Cate Bligh. Welcome, you damn beautiful sons of bitches.
Thank you for that wonderful intro, Christopher. I'm excited about this topic, which I am completely ignorant to. So let's get into it.
All right. So the topic for today is AI agents. What are they? And brainstorming how they can be used to make your creative work easier. So I was hoping to have someone on here who was an AI expert we could bounce ideas off of and ask questions to. But in lieu of that, I actually did my own research with my homie Grok. So I asked Grok to come up with a good metaphor to explain the difference between your standard LLM and an AI agent. And here is what Grok said. Let me pull that up. 1 second. I swear I had this up. No, there it is. Okay. So AI agents are like chefs. A chef has a goal, say preparing a delicious meal. They actively engage with their surroundings, check the pantry for ingredients, deciding how much salt to add, adjusting the heat on the stove, and finally serving the dish. They're autonomous, making decisions and taking actions to bring the meal to life. And LLMs would be like the recipe book. A recipe book is packed with knowledge, detailed instructions, ingredient lists, and cooking tips. It can tell you exactly how to make a perfect lasagna, but it can't pick up a knife, layer the noodles, or turn on the oven. It's a passive resource offering valuable information without the ability to act. How does that hit you guys?
Well, I completely understand that because I was put in terms that females will totally get cookbooks, cooking, kitchen stuff.
Yep. In their domain where they belong.
Yes.
Well, and then for the men, it's a tool. It's like a hammer, whereas the agent is the person who's wielding the hammer.
So we have Nate up here who requested this subject. So maybe we can just start asking Nate all the questions, even though he doesn't know anything about it.
I thought I was going to be the one asking the questions.
Yeah.
But,
you flipped
switcheroo. Anyway, yeah. Hey, how's it going?
It's going well. How are you doing, sir?
I'm still getting over my unfortunate cold, but yeah, actually have a voice today, so I can speak. The last week I've largely been, what's even the word, non-vocal. Couldn't even get words out.
Well, now you sound like you could do a Folgers commercial, so congratulations on that.
All right. Well, if you know someone casting, send them my way. So I was really curious in this whole thing, and your phrase that you just, or rather your statement just a second ago, comparing LMs to agents makes a lot of sense. So I'm trying to figure out how to build one of these for my business, particularly to handle like bookings and even customer facing like inquiries. If people just like, want to know more about pricing for various stuff, like it can act like essentially like those chat bots that a lot of support websites have, but not necessarily just support, but can actually execute on booking and invoicing or anything like that as well. I'm not quite to the point where it can actually like say it's like someone wants to book photos and we agree on pricing, we agree on packaging, we agree on a date. And it's like, cool, I'm going to send that email to the team so we can get it in the calendar, right? It can't do that yet. That's like the next step. So I'm actually wondering if you guys are familiar with any existing platforms that can connect any of these LMs to a system that can actually do that and then be able to integrate with something like Gmail or something like Stripe to be able to send an invoice directly. Do y'all know of anything like that yet?
Yeah, so I did a little research and seems like the best like starter for this kind of thing is called N98. I don't know if that's .com. Really just Google it and you come up with it. And what it will give you is a visual workflow, which starts with like a trigger, which could be a lot of different things. But for the purposes of this, it'd be like somebody talking to like a chat GPT agent that is then connected to a bunch of workflows and a bunch of different tools. So you'd have some database for available bookings. You could plug that in. You would have your Stripe integration further down the line when they decide to pull the trigger on this kind of thing. Like it can go. The great thing about these kind of things, from my understanding, is that you can chain them with, like, maybe not decision trees, but like certain kinds of setups. So they ask for this kind of thing. So you go to this agent who has these connections, these tools connected to them, and yes, you can connect that also to Gmail or whatever. Yes, Kate.
Yeah, I was going to say, have you tinkered around with Zapier at all? Because they have some pretty wild AI stuff integrated with it. And it can also talk to all your existing tools and apps you're using probably for your business, like you're talking about Stripe and stuff and Gmail. And it can absolutely do the workflow that you were talking about, triggering an email and all this stuff. And I know it can do a lot of what you're saying. So that's another one to look into. And they have like all kinds of like really crazy AI stuff. I have like OpenAI API connected to my Zapier that I use for one of my clients, and it's doing stuff, and it's very, very, very inexpensive. The Zapier subscription is expensive, but if you get a workflow going that kind of runs on its own, it might pay for itself pretty quickly. So that's another suggestion.
I will look into that. I haven't used Zapier in years. I remember that's kind of like a if this then that type service. Is that correct? Am I remembering that right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of like everything's integrated with it. The only thing that isn't is X, but pretty much every other app that you can imagine that's established in some way has an integration with it. And if it doesn't, if they have an API, you can set it up. So yeah, the only thing that's a bummer is the price. But like I said, if you get it going, doing something that's like saving you a ton of time and money and everything, it's worth it. So yeah, that would be worth checking out.
So, okay. My other thought is, like, my budget right now is extremely limited. So it's got to be possible to be able to build one of these things and have it run locally, right? So, like, I have a home server, which just basically feeds like, audio, video to like any device in the house, and it can stream through Plex and all that stuff. So it's connected and like running through the internet all the time anyway. I was reading that you can install like instances of DeepSeek onto something as simple as like a Mac Mini. So if you have a setup like this, there's got to be apps like, Chris, remember that app Chainer that we were using a couple of years ago in order for like upscaling and like, I don't know.
Yeah. It's like a node-based system. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that runs locally and talks to the LMs, because something like that is already primed to be able to read how each of these like image generation or like image adjustment models work. So it shouldn't be that much more difficult to be able to just plug an LM node into that. So say you have DeepSeek, it's talking to that, and then you give it these instructions to be able to essentially call up web pages and stuff. My question is, like, how accurate do they? So like, say it does pull up Gmail. Can it navigate around there pretty well? It does pull up Stripe. How does it know like where everything is kept, or do you have to give it super detailed instructions?
My understanding is the way these tools work, at least N98. I mean, obviously you can code your own stuff, but that might be a big ask, especially for people who have never done this before, is that you're working with the APIs. So, like there's a preformed way that you interact with them. And I believe, at least on N98, you have these, these tools set up beforehand. So the LM are for that particular part of the agent already knows what that syntax is to use, and you just kind of tell it what you want it to do. What are the inputs? What are the outputs? If I need to process this information in some way, how do I do that? If I need to split off from that and do bookkeeping on top of that, that'd be a separate agent. But it's all node based. As far as like exporting that out once you create it, I'm not sure how that works, or if it works at all.
Okay, more research required. But if I can get something like this running locally with like just basically the minimal overhead of setting it up one time and then paying for the internet service, that would of course be ideal. just like I said, because of the budgetary issues. I'm wondering also, when you give an LM enough access as like an agent to be able to kind of, well, because the whole idea is that it runs autonomously, right? And if you have your server attached to the internet all the time, and there's like, let's just say 99% uptime, right? So if people are actually interacting with it, it has to be learning and like saving this database. How quickly would this thing grow? I'm wondering. So like if I have like a terabyte hard drive in there, and say like it has a handful of customer interactions like per day, a lot of that's going to be saved through like text logs, I imagine. So it's not going to add up really quickly. But I mean, I'm really curious about like what, I guess the back ends are still kind of black boxes. We don't really know how it does its learning, so to speak. Because I'd like to be able to set these things up to be able to learn from their own behaviors, and then be able to interact with like each next customer more efficiently, you know?
That would be kind of like fine tuning an LLM model. That would be different from creating an agent. That would be like a separate process.
Right. But I guess my question here is, can it fine tune itself through its customer interactions? And if so,
you'd have to do that yourself. You'd have to save all that kind of stuff and then feed it back through in some kind of training process. And I don't know that you have the GPUs for that, sir.
No, I do not currently. I mean, I wonder if there's a way to like just, because one thing that I was doing before in order to build it to the point that I have it now, which is it's local. It can't actually reach out and do tasks yet, but it's really, really, really good at interacting with potential customers, at least in test settings. And it's really good at knowing exactly what like the company does and like what we offer and all this stuff. And that was essentially just through prompting it, talking to it, getting it to essentially be like, well, how do you want to interact with customers? And it was doing its thinking thing and being like, well, I should be professional, I should be friendly and all that stuff. And like having it create its own little sort of persona, and then being able to build on that. And then when you run out of chat space, export that into an entire log, feed that log to a new chat, be like, integrate this entire exchange, right? And then it assimilates all that information. So it's just like learning, it's like nested in there, essentially. So it's built itself its own little persona and stuff. But a problem that I was running into just last week is, say, for example, Claude, 3.7, I can't get it to assume personas anymore. Like when I feed it that information, it just won't do it. It says, well, I can like help you out with this, like, with creating estimates or writing emails and stuff like that, but it won't actually assume the little mode, including all of the details that it knows about the company. I suppose if you have your own custom agent, you could then, I guess, give it more explicit instructions. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, because you'd be using the API, so you'd be able to write a custom pre-prompt. So it would always be that persona. Kate, do you have your hand up, or is it just this thing?
Oh, just a glitch. I have nothing to add here, but this is great.
Yeah, so that's my understanding. Like the way that this usually works, from what I've seen, I've only done a little bit of research, is basically like you have a wrapper, like a GPT wrapper, wrapper, that kind of thing, and then it's connected to a database, and that's the memory that it has. Like it's so it can add to memory, it can take away from memory, so it's not just all like in the text, and then you have to like do some kind of weird thing to saving it. It's constantly doing that as you go along.
Okay. So that would be a shortcut for if I need to build something like that in the future. Because so far I've just been feeding it all of its information back to it in order to get it to build itself. Yeah. And now I have this really, it's a 2-page long prompt, but it works. It works on every LM that I've plugged it into, except for Claude 3.7 now, where, like I said, it refuses to adapt to persona, which is still weird to me. But the other interesting thing I've come across with this, with the ethics angle, is it ethical to portray an AI agent, say, as a person, quote unquote, right? Especially if it's so good. I mean, this goes back to the Turing test question, I guess, but especially if it's so good that it can fool other humans into thinking that it's a human, that you're actually talking to like a real studio manager, which will then book your photo shoot for you, right? If you push it far enough, it will admit that it's not a real human. I made sure to have it do that, so it doesn't have this, like kind of ethical gap, supposedly. But I've kind of been wrestling with that, especially because people are not really a fan of chat bots in general, especially these like super limited ones that are like on support pages, right? So I want to try and avoid that experience as much as possible while still having it be that thing. You know what I mean? Just a way better version of that thing. Any thoughts there?
Well, if people can't tell, doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, I get that, but I think I wrestle with that. I definitely wrestle with that. I think in some ways it does matter because if it doesn't have this little disclaimer in the fine print, people can feel like they're being tricked.
You can just straight up call it a chatbot. Talk to our chatbot, and that all your ethical dilemmas immediately go away. Like, it doesn't have to be this deep philosophical thing.
Yeah.
mean?
The only problem comes when it doesn't work good, right? We get mad when the chatbot doesn't have an answer for a question. We get mad when it says, "Oh, we'll email you in 24 hours." We get mad when the support agent, who's a real person, replies to the email with the answer that you provided as your question that it doesn't answer. If it works, I think people will be happy and satisfied. At least I would be.
Yeah. So you got a human, and they suck at their job, but we're doing it ethically. So we're ethically sucking. Is that better than just having a robot?
That's my mind.
Is that your alt account?
Rich put his hand up there.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, ethically speaking, like what Nate's talking about, like you could take it a step further, and like if a company assigned like you as like maybe you're doing a business with a company and they assigned you a representative from their company, a liaison or something like that, a sales rep, and it's actually an AI agent, and they never told you, and like it's really high level, and so like you don't know. I understand like the ethical question of that. Is that okay to do? I think it needs to be straightforward. I think the company should be like, "This is your AI sales representative." But some companies wouldn't want to do that, maybe.
Right. My thing here is that I feel like it would be more efficient if the person who's trying to book with the company thinks that it's a human, because then they would take it more seriously. Right. If they automatically assume it's a chatbot, then they automatically have these assumptions of its limitations and like, well, maybe it doesn't actually know what it's talking about. Maybe I don't want to book with this thing because it might get it wrong, Whereas like right now, like using it internally, we're having a lot of success. And like I said, it has a persona, like it gave itself a name, and like it talks like a human. And it's pretty dang good at avoiding these interesting little quirks of like grammar and type that most LMs tend to kind of fall into, right?
I have a question, Nate. So the booking you want people to do is, are they're exchanging money and all this stuff for this booking, or is it like a consult? See, yeah, I can see where you're coming now from this, because right, I would want a person to just like confirm the booking itself, or if I was chatting, right, for it. But if it was like just like a free consult or something like that, then I'd probably be more comfortable with it. So I see where you're coming from, but still, I mean, even with that, booking, if someone's like, "Oh, you go to this page and book my $500 package or whatever," like people will do that. So, I mean, is it much different than that process of just sharing? Yeah. So I get it. There's a little dilemma there.
Well, ideally, I'd like to have it run all through this system. Like the website right now, it doesn't have much pricing information on it. And I like it that way, because the way that we approach all of our packages is entirely custom. Like there's some stuff that's like one size fits all, but very little, right? So the actual kind of price discovery and like questioning aspect is really important. And that takes a lot of time. Sometimes it's a lot of back and forth emails and stuff. And like, honestly, it's time better spent that I could be out shooting, making the work. You know what I mean? And
do you need someone that just does the phone calls for you? Like, I feel like that would be, Sorry,
Well,
I'm not.
kind of like, yes, but like the entire, like essentially studio manager. That's sort of what we're playing with this idea as like an AI agent studio manager. It will do the emails, it will do the calls, it will do the correspondence online, it will do the invoicing, all that kind of stuff. You just point it in that direction and it goes. You know what I mean? So like, I know that this is possible, and I'm really wondering, like, how is it that people will react to this sort of thing, especially if it's really convincingly human?
Well,
Like, do you need to like get that out of the way up front, where you're having this conversation, but then you're like, well, actually, are you a machine? Does it need to be like laugh about it and then be like, hey, yeah, you got it right, you guess it, you know?
heyo.
Because I just reminded myself of those. Remember those old robocalls, like from a couple of years ago, where you could ask it, like, "Are you a real person?" and it would laugh, but give you some canned response, and it would never actually say the words, "I am a human being."
Yep.
Like it needs to be honest about what it is if you push it.
Or no, hear me out. It just avoids the question. So in this
No, but then we're in the same position that we were.
So in this situation, you could set one up that's like a negotiator, right? And the agent part of it is contacting you and saying, "Do you want to accept this deal?" So that the back and forth isn't something you're dealing with. It's only the pull the trigger part of it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Say that last part one more time. We just broke up real quick.
So the back and forth that you don't want to deal with wouldn't be a part of it. It's only you pulling the trigger that would be part of it. So this is where an AI agent actually would make sense. So it's just emailing you or whatever, or it's calling you and giving you a weird conversation for some reason.
Yeah, okay. I have to think about that part a little bit more. Rich, what's your opinion here?
I was just gonna kind of bring it to like a broader sense. Like I think you're talking about using it, as like a solopreneur, like being able to function as an entrepreneur, as like a company with like 5 or 10 people, but actually as somebody who's running it yourself with a collaboration of AI agents who are helping you and doing all these kind of mundane every tasks that like you could basically
Essentially, yes.
yeah, basically. Because I was watching a video earlier and they was talking about like that's going to be a huge part of AI agents is it's really going to help the entrepreneurial community with like solopreneurs because now you can essentially like you spoke about, you can train it to answer your emails and like to respond to them in specific ways, and you can actually train them to be like a team, and they can actually like bounce ideas across with each other. Like one of them can generate the idea and then the other one can refine it, and then the other one can like cross check it with whatever data that you've uploaded, whether it's like a company brief that speaks to like what you and your company represent. Anyway, you can train it in all sorts of ways, and then they can kind of train each other. And yeah, it's amazing like to bring it to that type of level as a solopreneur, because I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to, because we can all use a little extra hand, in our business dealings, I think.
Yeah, that's kind of what we're using it for internally already. And including like, because the latest version of it is running through Gemini 2 right now, because it has the longest, I guess, chat window, context window? I'm not sure what the right phrase is.
Context window, yes.
Okay, so it's actually kind of an obnoxiously long context window right now in order to sort through it, but it's really good at what it does already. It knows the price sheet, it knows the sales tactic, it knows like how we like to interact with clients, how we like to do price discovery and all that stuff, and it's actually really damn good at it. So I just need to essentially be able to let it out into the wild at this point. But I guess I would just have to be upfront about it. It's like, be like, hey, my name is Rudy. I'm an AI agent. Just have it be straight up with people, whether or not the humans would interact with that positively or not. My only worry there is that if people think they're just talking to a chatbot, they'll be like, I'm going to go somewhere else that has like a more personal touch.
Well, you could always just come with them up front and be like if you prefer not to interact with this, you can email that, and then you just spent a whole bunch of money on something you can't use.
That's such a good point, because like when internet booking and stuff started happening, there were a lot of people who were like, no, just put a phone number on your website and they'll call you and that's how you have to sell. And I was like, yeah, I was doing wedding photography by myself. I'm like, I can't do that. So, I'll just have everything up on my website. They can schedule a consult with me, and then I have a time when I'm on the phone with them and all this stuff, and then send them the invoice via email and everything. And we're like, what? You're crazy. And so it's just, but that there were some clients that wouldn't do that. So those aren't my clients. So my client would be the one that would be, a little bit tech savvy and okay with it. So that might be, just reframing who your client is. And then they're the ones that will be the happy to do this. They actually find it more convenient for themselves too, because they don't have to like maybe wait for a response because they send something middle of the night or whatever. So you can like play up the conveniences of it as like a sales point on your website or whatever.
And you can always offer an alternative. Like that's the thing. Would you prompt the AI to like, if somebody was like, I want a real human, multiple times, would you allow your AI to be like, all right, well, if you dial this phone number or we're connecting you to a real, like, would that be an option? I wonder.
Yeah, I think that definitely would be an option. The only problem is there's no guarantee. So right now it's a super small team, and there's no guarantee that we would be available at that time, right? So they could ring that number, or say like this agent gets to the point where they could call the number on the website, but it connects to the agent who has like a voice synthesis and whatnot, and it actually speaks to them. And which is a goal eventually. But then like they're like, well, I do want a human. Okay, so then it connects me or someone else on my team to that call. But what if we're on set, and we can't be disturbed, right? It's like if there's no one actually there to answer the phone at the time when somebody needs the phone answered, we're in the same predicament.
Well, you can maybe set up some kind of check-in, check-out system where you're like, no one's available right now. If you'd like to leave a message, blah blah blah.
Yeah, if that were me going through that system, I wouldn't even be bothered. I'd be like, well, if I can't actually reach a human and I'm just talking to the robot, then I don't know. Maybe don't. This is one of the things I'm wrestling with. It's like how can I make it as efficient yet accessible to like the average person, like the mom that just wants to call to book family photos? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I would say keep it as simple as possible, especially starting out, and then you add those features. Like, don't make it bigger than it is because you don't even know if it's going to work out the way you want it to. So if you get like the minimum viable product that you want together that does the minimum amount of things, and maybe can trick the boomers into talking to the AI agent, whether they, because they're not going to know, even if you put like a message in the interface that says you are talking to an AI agent, like they're not going to know what that means. They're just going to be like, they're just going to talk, like they're not going to read. Like they don't even know where to put in a URL on a website. So, anything that you can do to warn them is not going to work. So, keep that in mind.
Fair point. I'd be curious to see or to hear any input from these other folks that we brought up here.
Yeah, who do we got hands up? I can't see. Like they're all sticking for me.
We've got the RAF and we've got Edward Lynn up here, both with their hands up. So I wasn't paying attention with who was first.
So whoever unmics fastest is the one who. Yeah.
Ready, set, go.
You guys are funny. So hello, Christopher, Rich, and Kate. Good to see you again. So one of the areas that I'm in, not even using AI agents, is I'm in death care, the funeral cemetery cremation business. We currently use a AI generator to generate our obituaries or eulogies for us to where families can put their information. We also use it in our memorial marker division, so people can put all their information in, and it actually designs the memorial marker for us. And now we're trying to find out if we could have an AI attendant on our website, so it at least can walk the family through what they're looking for. The challenge we have is that you can't distinguish between someone who just had a death and someone who's just making an inquiry. So that's one of the things that we've been having a difficulty with, because the bot is not a real human, and it doesn't have that empathy or compassion that we have. This is my 37th year in death care, and it's just a whole lot different. Someone's calling from a hospital or a nursing home or from a home, and they're frantic, and it's just a little bit different. So I don't know how, hopefully one day that we can at least get it to the point where it can transfer it to one of our funeral directors or family service counselors or cemeterians right away, but that's going to be something. So my question is simple. Again, I know that we have this because we're doing a lot of outreach now. So for every one funeral, 66 people are immediately impacted. And our goal is how do we get to those 66 so that we can begin the process of drip marketing to them the information for them to begin to think of their own arrangements. And that's the question I have. How do we use AI in that perspective of people thinking of end of life matters in advance while their emotions are at rest versus trying to do it on the day death occurs and they're in the middle of a crisis?
So there may be a way, I'm wondering, where you chain together a bunch, like you have like a generalized prompted LLM that gets the information first, and then maybe chain in like multiple personas, and then you're prompting those individually, and you're saying like, if it's this kind of person, talk to them like this. These are the rules. If it's this kind of person, talk to them like this, et cetera, et cetera. And if you're going to, and then from there, from those chains of personas, you can then link in your whatever it is that you want to do. If you want to email them, you can collect the email and then hook that up to a separate agent that adds them to the database, and then that goes up and personalizes it for them, gets their information, puts that in also into a database, and then you've got personalized stuff that you can send out emails to them, that kind of thing. So yeah, I think that would work pretty well. It's certainly better than just doing it as one time. It probably will trip itself up eventually, which I think is the whole point of these things. Is like, if you give a bunch of instructions to one agent, certainly it can't handle more than one persona. At least I don't think it can, not effectively and not reliably. So this is where that would probably come in and be handy.
That's an interesting idea. Like how would an AI with multiple personas act? Because you're giving it a mental illness.
Yes. I mean,
like is that actually like, ooh, that's tricky, man. That's tricky.
Well, I think that, Christopher, if I'm understanding correctly, you're programming or giving the AI the different prompts. So if someone, like if we say, have a death occurred already, because that's one of the things that we ask families when they call, or are you inquiring about information, etc., whether it's cemetery, funeral, cremation. So those areas can then direct the family directly to those spaces, or through the AI agent, and that right there then will give, do they need to just get information like you said, or do they need to talk to family service counselor, funeral director, etc. I think that right there would be where it could be instantly transferred over to a real person in death care.
Yeah. So, I mean, like the simplest version of that would just be like don't even give them a chat window at first. You're just like 3 buttons, like these are your options. And then that'll bring you, each one of the 3 options will bring you to a specialized pre-prompted LLM. And then you can go from there. That would probably be the most dead simple way to do it. No pun intended.
It's like code switching. The thing is there, like once you're locked into like either of these modes or personas, for lack of a better term, there has to be a way to make sure that you are locked into it. So that way inside that context window that if this, then that directs you into, it won't backtrack essentially. And then suddenly, like say something happens in that conversation and then it changes its persona again and suddenly starts speaking to you in a very different way just because of some type of unpredictable action on the user's end. You know what I mean? It's like coding in these kind of persona guardrails. And that would be tricky, especially with like really sensitive, like emotional stuff, like, funeral direction and whatnot. And I just got to say, I find it a little humorous. You call it death care. That's like, it's just the inversion of health care. I never thought of it like that, but it actually makes kind of a funny, morbid sense. So good on you for that.
Well, Nate, after 37 years being in the business, most people may not be aware of it, but the word undertaker means that we're undertaking the responsibility of helping your family through the death care process. So that's the reason why it's called the death care profession. But most people, because if you're not in the profession, it's very different to see that. But we are undertakers because we undertake the most difficult situation when families going through that. And for most people, they only do it once or twice in their lifetime, meaning that they're the one actually making an arrangement for their loved one who just passed. So they don't have a big history of sitting with a cemeterian or a person to talk about cremation. So a lot of the terminology that a family's hearing for the very first time in the middle of a crisis is a little bit different. And that's why death care is so sensitive when it comes to trying to walk people through that array of very nuanced things because it's so brand new. So, but it helps us because it gives us a lot more credibility in reference to helping families make arrangements in advance while their emotions are at rest. So in the last, since the lockdown and COVID, it has really opened us up a lot more to AI, to technology, because death care, the whole profession itself, is literally 30 years behind everything else. I mean, it literally is. We're so slow because we're so used to just dealing with humans every day, walking into the funeral home, or the cemetery, walking them out to the gravesite. So for us to even begin this is just so incredible. And we were forced pretty much into the technology side. Now it's much more difficult because most of the directors who are between 65, 70, 80-year-old owners, they've all reverted back to their old ways. And because I've been doing it 37, I'm only 61, I'm a lower generation of people. And then you even have younger generation of people that are having a whole different thing. So it's just, death care is just completely different. But everybody participates in it whether they want to or not. That's the difference. So, but thanks for letting me share.
So, Ref, what were you going to say on that?
Obviously, I'm fascinated. Hi, Christopher, Kate, Rich. Hi, Edward, seeing you around. I like to sort of think through it and try and see if I can get to another side. And I'm wondering, maybe, like there becomes almost AI bureau. Say Edward would say he has a job available for an AI, and the various movers and shakers will put their AI forward as a candidate for the job, and then Edward can have a conversation as if he was, going
Sort of
to
like
employ
a
them.
job interview kind of thing.
Yeah, and see whether, what would you do in this situation? What would you say in this situation? That was one thing. The other thing is I wonder that if I can see a rule coming where your companies are obliged to announce right at the start, much like they say this conversation could be recorded for training purposes, blah, 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 that it has to announce that it's AI that you're dealing with, kind of thing. And I can also see a time where, I don't know exactly how they do it, but that conversation has a unique identifier. It has letters and numbers, which says the company, maybe where it is, maybe what LLM it's using, and time, date, stamp, this, that, and the other. So I can go back and say, hey, look, they sold me some crap Windows. Who did you speak to? That you've got some reference point of that conversation. Yeah, just some ideas. I set this up thinking that mankind needs to create a constitution for the robots, the rules they have to live by, kind of thing. But the more I've thought about it, the more I think that it's going to have to be almost case by case. It's going to be a use-based set of ethics for each set of robots for whatever task they're being used for. But I'm still just sort of nibbling around the edges at the moment with it all.
Asimov's rules don't cut it.
Yeah, I mean, they were written not to cut it. What's up, Rich?
Not for military robots, no.
Rich, you have your hand up.
Oh, sorry about that. My mic was off. While he was talking, I checked, and because I thought that was a brilliant idea, a place where you can just like shop for a customized AI agent, kind of interview it or whatever. And yeah, there's a website, agent.ai, and it has like an AI agent marketplace where you can hire AI agents and stuff like that, specialized ones. And there's even a builder network where you can hire builders to build these agents for you. It's really cool.
Yeah, so this conversation I wanted to get to was how can we use them in our own creative workflows? So one of the ideas I had, and maybe you guys can tell me what you think about this, is okay, so repetitive tasks, I think, is what they're good at. And what I was thinking, so I have a video, I'm going to put it out. It looks best on this aspect ratio for this website. It looks like best on this aspect ratio on this website. So you have an agent that takes a look at the video, sees what aspect ratio it's at. Does it need to crop it? If it doesn't, that's fine. Whatever, it uploads it or it passes it back to you. Cuts up different versions of it automatically for each one of them. This is super handy because I have to do this kind of stuff manually, and then on top of that, even have one that's okay, past the cropping process. Okay, we've got this cropped. It's in the optimal size that we need for it. Let's throw on your watermark. What's the best place for that? Is this video mostly light or dark? I will give you the light version if it's a dark. If it's dark video, if it's a dark video, we'll give you the light version of your logo and throw it in the optimal place for it, so it's not like super in your way or anything like that. This is kind of stuff that I could definitely use it. So what do you guys think of that?
So I don't know if I was following you there, because like your workflow is so specific. So if we kind of just say it can do steps for us that are just manual tasks instead of us having to do the clicking and the
doing it manually.
Yeah.
And like the ideal version of that in this scenario is like it knows it's context sensitive, right? It's not just like, because you could do it with like some kind of automated system where it's just like, it's this size of video, so it's always going to put the watermark on at these coordinates every single time. Like the upside of this would be no matter what the size of the video it is, it always puts it in the correct spot reliably, and you don't have to tell it or anything. You just feed it the file, and that's all you have to do. And it gives you multiple different versions. This one's for LinkedIn, this one's for X, this one's for Facebook, if you really want to do that.
Yeah, to me that's crazy that it can already do that. Like that should just be in the program for we export.
I just like say, yeah, I would definitely use something like that. Sorry to interrupt, Rich. Just because like there's so many platforms for publishing now. Like you just one click and it exports to all these formats. Like, yeah, that's a perfect use case for it. The only trick is having it be able to actually see the content to be able to adjust it accordingly in a way that's still like 100% aesthetically pleasing, right? Like if you need to crop a certain part, can it reframe like old pan and scan? Like remember when they'd have to adapt anamorphic movies for like 4/3 TVs? This film has been modified for home video release. And then you look at like that version versus the original, like theatrical version, like it's reframed entirely differently, but it's done by humans to make sure that like the subject is still prominent despite the different formats. So training it to be able to recognize a wide variety of subjects and still be able to reframe stuff, I think that would really be the tricky part.
Yeah, we're going to say, Rich?
Yeah, I was going to say, Kate, specifically because she's a photographer and she's done wedding photography, she could have one that she has uploaded, hundreds of samples of her wedding photography and trained it like how to handle like portraits versus like groups of people versus like landscapes and whatever, terms she wants to use, so that she could just like, upload her reel or whatever from photographing a specific wedding, and it knows what to do with every single photograph, exactly how she wants it, and spits it all out in a location for her to retrieve. Like that would be really cool.
I'd like to think that there are probably agents out there, maybe just for images, where I mean, there's already computer vision. So like say when you go into Photoshop and it says cut out the the person, there's like a specific tool for that. So it already has. There's got to be tools out there that are independent from anything else. So you could feed this tool and say, hone in on the subject and give me the outer coordinates of that subject and make sure that doesn't get cut off when you do the crop.
Yeah, I'm wondering here why video tools are so far behind on this, or if they are or not. Because like all this stuff has been available in photography editing tools like for a long time, and it's a pretty automated the experience. It just maybe it's different because now it's the sheer volume of the video amount that's coming through. Maybe it just wasn't a problem before. People are just dealing with like more and more and more files. But I have a little thought as we're talking about all this. It's like, are we expecting AI agents to do human tasks? Like, I think we should be thinking a little bit differently about it and thinking of like tasks that aren't human tasks. They're actually computer tasks or something abstract that we can't even think of because we're using our tiny human brains to solve these problems. So, maybe the problem, we're trying to find a solution that a human would do. Okay, this is what a human would do, would chat with the client, would make the sales pitch, would sell them the package, make a custom package, blah, 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 blah. But it's like, that's what a human would do. We should be thinking of maybe how would we use like asking AI, like asking Grok and being like, what would be the best way to use you for this kind of functionality? Because I'm thinking about it like a meat body with that can't think on the same wavelength as you to solve my problem. So I don't know.
Well, one thought that immediately came to my mind right there. Sorry to keep just interjecting, by the way.
No,
I'm not
good.
very
Keep
good
going.
at the hands thing. So we already have these algorithms that can predict what we like, right? In terms of like social media attention. So like the attention economy concept has never been more true. So I imagine the LMs will just continue to get better at this and be able to anticipate a person's needs. The real crux of this, though, comes down to privacy. And so, like, thinking about it in terms of not doing human tasks, but what is it that an agent like this can do, which is very different. So, algorithmically, it can identify like exactly what a user would want. Like, I'm actually experimenting with something like this in order to identify blind spots in like brand offerings, or like when people come to me and it's like, well, here's what we do, and we want to create content for this kind of thing for this sort of audience. It's like, okay, so you plug all that information that they give you into the LM and be like, identify the blind spot or like a market that they're not capitalizing on, and then sell them the solution to that, right? So that's kind of I think, a pretty effective way to use it. But getting the agent to be able to recognize that itself and then immediately be able to sell exactly what a user might need. Like they come to you for this type of photography package, and it's like, put in your Instagram profile or like put in your social media information. It'll look at that stuff and then be able to identify patterns and be like, okay, well, this is what you need, right? Or if you buy this kind of package, we'll amplify your existing, brand like A, B, and C. The trick there is that I know me personally, I am not a fan of that type of invasive, I guess, profiling. Like if it just feels creepy in a way that like it's almost like a specter that can like see into your soul.
I was gonna say it's a hyper personalized experience.
Yeah, if they're giving up their information to, and if they're going in with eyes open, I mean, like it doesn't matter what we think of it. Is it like, does the customer even want it? And they can always say no to that. Is the ref is your hand up?
Hi, yeah, I'm sort of thinking again. I guess I'm stuck in my theme a little bit, but the idea that you get it has the potential functionality, but it's your apprentice, and it just sits on your shoulder or in the corner of your screen, and it watches you doing all these things you are going to want it to do. You teach it by example. So and it go, oh, I get you, and you're having conversations with it, and sort of, right, now you have a try, and so it's sort of it understands all the macros, if you like. I mean, my computer knowledge is basic and old, but there are macros in Photoshop so that you could set up a macro to keep repeating itself, keep making it that big. It's a JPEG, you save it, it numbers this, that, and the other. So yeah, so so you take on an apprentice AI, and then you train it into those things you want it to perform, and it can walk your dog on the first day too.
That's essentially what I've been doing with the internal model that I've been working with, and like I said, it can sell. It does a pretty good job. I've had a few people experiment with it now, and I am very happy with the direction that it's going personally. But it just needs to be able to actually send that email when it says, I'm going to send the email. You know what I mean? That's where I'm at now.
Bad one.
So yeah, this is interesting because it sounds like what we're talking about is something where it's like, yeah, I'm gonna train to be like you, but I think maybe what would be more effective, at least from my perspective, is because I still want to be doing this kind of stuff, but What if it was trained more on augmenting everything that you're doing instead? Like, oh, you're probably going to want this thing ready to go. You're probably going to want this setup in Photoshop. You're going to, like it's setting it up for you before you even do anything. Like it's watching your actions, watching for patterns, and then just boom, it's ready to go. You don't even have to do anything. And it could be something where it's like, you're like their AI coding tools where you just hit tab and it, jumps forward in a way that it thinks you want to go, and then you can undo it if it's not the right thing. But you just keep hitting the tab and see what happens. And as it learns, as it gets better about your workflows, you're just speeding through the project. And that sounds great. I don't know how that would work in real life.
Well, I think that would work essentially like that movie Her, right? Because that's what that character, that operating system really is. It's a very capable AI agent built into something like Mac OS. I don't think that's that far off, honestly. There has to be people like building that right now.
Yeah, I think, it's basically made for men. We don't actually want anybody to help us with our thing. All we want is Scarlett Johansson's voice, just guiding us along, telling us that we're doing amazing and then we're an amazing person. I think that's what we're really.
Definitely. I deliberately changed the voice model in Gemini so that it wouldn't be some attractive sounding woman. You know what I mean? Like that's a slippery slope for men. I gotta say, like talking to a woman, quote unquote, which is capable and seems to be intelligent. So I was like, nope, that's a danger. I turned that shit right off.
So what does everybody else think? Would you opt out of the PSYOP automatically?
Yeah, totally. So that's why I have my wife and my PFP. So it makes it easier. But going back to what Cate said, and this is because I'm in death care and there is a big human component to it, that task cannot be taken away, because when you're sitting with a family, especially in care, you want to know how that person's doing, and with grief and all that and the stress level, you need human components. And that's the part that's really, really difficult, because you won't be able to do that with a robot, and a robot won't be able to really all the nuances that we deal with, especially when I'm sitting with the mother who just lost her child from an overdose, fentanyl, or then I sit with a person who's been married 65 years and death did them part, or I'm dealing with the person that just had a homicide. There is the AI agent, even if you give them all the things, that human component, especially that flesh of touching someone and being in the same space, in the same room with them, is just so unique. I'm looking at it for the task, because for every 100 funerals that we do, we've been tracking this for the last 22 years. There's 6,000 people that come through our facility. We average 66 family members per funeral. So it's 6,600 people that come through our funeral home. And my company that I have deals with 45,000 deaths a year. So we've tracked for the last 20 years, 2,900,000 families that come through our locations. And so what I'm looking at is, how do I take all that information and that data, which we have now, we're collecting it every day. How do we take that data and make it more meaningful? That's the task I would like for an AI agent to clean up, go through, help us to make sure that we're hitting the right ages, we're doing the right thing, and it's being as sensitive as it possibly can, because that's the task I'm doing now with just CSV files, Excel spreadsheets. We've been doing it, archaic, because again, we're the death care professor. It takes us a long time, but I'm still better accurate. I'd rather do it accurately versus doing it just because. So that's my thought. And I still tend to think that, because we call the person that we bring into our care the honoree. And for every family we serve in our company, we're honored to serve them. And we just want to make sure that we don't violate that trust, because it's a very sacred trust when families choose us. And I don't take that lightly, because that's someone's, parent or someone's child, or it's just a sensitive space. And that's one thing that we, in my company, because I've told all of our people that work with us, we will never have it say I'm an AI bot in our funeral homes or cemeteries or crematories at all. It's just too insensitive. I mean, this is one area, and I think Cate's correct, that we have to make sure we don't leave that task away, because when someone's calling us, guys, their emotions are off the chart, and you can't measure that with a robot.
Right. And I think also, like, you're delegating this job to pretty much the dumbest employee you can imagine, right? So yes, you can give them clear instructions, you can give them the binder with the step by step and everything, but it's still, going to be the dumbest employee that you've ever had, and you have to explain it every time. So just imagine that.
Yeah, so maybe not.
Yeah, but see, Kate, for us, Kate, that's the value of our asset, though. Because see, one of the things that we've learned in death care is that the ground crew and the person answers the phone, we call them implementers. That's the first level of value. The person answering our phones is the first level of value. They're the implementer. They're the one who direct that phone call. They do everything with that family. They got to make sure they transfer properly. And then the guy on the grounds crew, every time that family comes in to visit that grave, that grounds crew person has to have that sensitivity, even though we have two things that we've learned in the first level of value: physical labor and time, two diminishing commodities, because it takes physical labor, it takes the time. You can't change that. I mean, this is a function that just happens in life. But, we tell people, if you want to have more value, then you get to the next level of value, which is unification, to where you're managing people who are implementers. And like you said, it is a repetitive thing. And that's why I believe that the first level of value is where our young people should learn these skills and learn how to interact and have interdepartment skills and how to talk to other people and how to handle phone calls. I think that's where we're losing a lot of this, because, with technology, a lot of our young people are not getting those basic interpersonal skills and learning how to do that. In our funeral homes and cemeteries, that's what we're recognizing. We got people coming in, they don't know how to handle the phone call or the pressure of being in a room with 5 people who just had a death. They don't teach you that in college, because, these are real life situations. So it's just the human component, Kate. You just, you woke me up on that one, because I tend to think that because I'm in death care every day. And like I said, I'm at funerals and cemeteries every day. And it's a whole nother world. That's all.
Yeah. And we can all get kind of tuned out to, like, the part of our job that anything can just become a part of the job. Like, you're just like almost feel like you're a robot in a way in anything. So I think, I think we need to get a little more creative about how we can use these agents and stuff, instead of just being like, replace the human element. And I think it can free us up to, be more personal with our customers, enhance that experience, to give that time to them instead of taking it away with other tasks. Yeah.
Cutting out busy work and focusing on what's important. So if you're in a creative industry, you're more focused on the creativity side of things than you are on the bookkeeping side of things or the taking notes side of things. So there's a lot of tools for that, and hopefully we've gone over some of that. Maybe we can bring this up again next time, but we are ending up here. Does anybody have a final word they want to say? Not death care related.
You're funny. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. Death care related. I like that. Hey, you should be happy that we're alive and we serve you anyway.
Absolutely.
So don't get it twisted. Yeah. We're gonna pick you up anyway.
I appreciate you being on here, sir.
I have one more thing I'd like to bring to attention, and for people who might not have heard of it on here. There's an account on Twitter, or X, I guess. I'm still not used to calling it X for some reason. It's called Kiki Terminal, I think. And it's an AI agent. It seems to be largely autonomous, speaks nonsense on Twitter, but it also creates generative art. And what is that place? The Foundation or something like that? Not Foundation, Fellowship recently did like a release of a whole bunch of its art with like a statement from the machine and stuff. I'm not sure if you guys saw that or heard of it, but that would definitely be a great follow-up topic to talk about next time.
Yeah, absolutely. Machine fed completely. Yeah, I'm curious about that. I'm wondering if anybody would actually care if it's entirely based on that, because I've heard some examples of it, and I'm wondering if that's even something somebody would be interested in. But yeah, so this has been
definitely curious.
Yeah. So, I mean, some for the next episode. Anybody else? Ref, did you have something to say before we head out?
Oh, he's gone now. I was just going to say how impressed I was someone could hold a space whilst competing in NASCAR.
Yeah, I was wondering if that was a movie or something else.
Speedway.
Yeah, it could have been a chainsaw. You don't know.
I mean, I feel this is the question of the age. We're going into an epoch. The only other thing I was thinking is, I know a couple of people who've got robot vacuum cleaners, and that's like, that's been the sort of genesis. You've got a robot in your house moving around, and the first thing people have thought of is, hey, if only someone could do the vacuuming for me. So yeah, it's just going to trundle along. I think I don't know how long it's going to be before somebody has a robot in their house that's doing the washing up, walking the dogs, keeping the kids entertained. But
Next year.
it's just around the corner.
Keeping the wife
it's just around
happy.
the corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna
It's
say
very
when Christopher and I move in together, that'll be like Christopher will be like that for me, I think. Right?
I'll be the robot for you. What am I, a machine? What are you objectifying me?
I wanted to add before we close up that we have Luma Labs as a affiliated partner for our shows and podcasts and all this stuff. So if you are interested in trying images and video generation, you can try Luma Labs Dream Machine, and you can follow the link in the Jumbotron, Projectotron, and also down in the Purple Pill.
They are the best, 100% right now. Yeah. With image to video, they are the absolute best. I'm doing some wild stuff, and you'll see that if you follow me and you keep an eye on the timeline. You'll see some stuff that you've never seen before pretty soon, the next 2 days. I'm going to go ahead and end it there. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and I will catch you all later.